Hello, everybody. This is Marc Cervantes, and this is Cerv's Legal Morsel of the Day. I am very excited today that I have Anna Barsky from IPX, who's going to speak about 1031 and deferred exchanges. Hello, Anna. How are you today?
Hello, I'm good, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. Anna and I have worked together over the years, and I thought today would be a great time for people that are interested in deferred exchanges or 1031 exchanges to learn a little bit about the basics. And if you do know about 1031 exchanges, to extrapolate on the different ways that we could use it. So, Anna, let's start with what is a 1031? Some people still call them Storker exchanges. What is a 1031 exchange?
Right. 1031, super easy mechanism. It's a tax deferral strategy. Basically allows real estate investors to defer paying taxes when they sell any type of investment real estate. And all they have to do is just buy another piece of investment real estate in a specific time frame. So just to give you a quick example, let's say, Mark, you purchased a condo 3 years ago for $300,000. You've been renting that condo, so that's your investment property. You're now selling it for $500,000. The government is, of course, going to tax you on the $200,000 profit that you made, right? In order to defer that tax payment, all that you have to do is buy another investment condo or another piece of investment real estate, and you get that tax deferral. So what I always say is the easiest definition is a sale plus a purchase equals a tax deferral. That's really all a 1031 is.
Fantastic. So outside of the tax deferment, what other benefits are there with a 1031?
Yeah, the tax deferral is definitely the biggest benefit and what 1031s are known for. There's some other great reasons to participate in a 1031 exchange. In my example, because Mark, you weren't hit with that tax up front, you're now able to purchase a new property that's a lot higher in value than the property that you sold. So your purchasing power is really dramatically increased when you implement a 1031 exchange. And a lot of the clients that I've worked with for the last 10 years have maybe started out with a $300,000 investment condo, but have been able to build their way into a $1 million portfolio of real estate. And they're able to do that fairly quickly because they don't have to pay taxes every single time they sell a piece of property. 1031s are also used sometimes to expand a real estate portfolio because you could sell one big property and then buy a bunch of small properties to complete your exchange. You can use it to consolidate a portfolio. So similarly, you could sell a bunch of small properties and buy one big property to complete your exchange. You can diversify your real estate portfolio with the 1031 because there's a like-kind requirement, but all investment real estate is like-kind to any other investment real estate. So you could sell residential and buy commercial, or you could sell, some farmland and buy an industrial property. So because you can move into different types of real estate, you could really diversify your portfolio by using Section 1031.
So who should be thinking about a 1031? Obviously, in your example, the person that owned their investment condominium, but who else should be thinking about even considering this?
Anybody that owns investment real estate or owns real estate that's used in their trade or business. So anyone that owns like we said, a condo that's used for rental purposes, and that goes for 2 flats, small apartment buildings, large apartment buildings. Anyone that owns commercial real estate, so retail centers, medical office buildings, industrial property. Anyone that uses or owns farmland, farmers and anyone that owns farmland uses 1031 constantly. Vacant land, any property that's held for investment really falls under Section 1031. Mineral rights, air rights, oil and gas royalties can be exchanged as well.
All right. So now if somebody's interested in it, they fall under one of the categories that you just enumerated. So what should they be thinking about initially? Should they be calling you? Should they be calling me? So what's the next step for somebody that wants to sell their investment property?
Yeah, so you definitely have to get a 1031 company involved. And that's, of course, what I do. The 1031 company does have to be involved prior to the closing of the sale. And that's because the main 1031 rule that you have to follow is you can't walk away with your funds. That's why you have to hire a 1031 company. Our job is to safeguard those funds in between the sale of the old property and the purchase of the new property. So you do have to get us involved before the closing, because if you walk away with the funds, you're no longer eligible to do the exchange. So definitely get us involved sooner rather than later. But absolutely before the closing. I'd say you want to consult with your CPA as well. So talk to your CPA, talk about what your tax liability is, what those tax savings would be. Of course, get your real estate attorney involved. A lot of the times your real estate attorney, and Marc is very experienced with 1031s, will help kind of navigate you through the exchange. We'll coordinate the paperwork with the 1031 company. I would say that, a small amount of the exchanges that we do, a small percentage of the exchanges that we do involve a complex issue, like a partnership issue or related party issue or something like that. So if you get Marc or I involved ahead of time, we can iron out some of those issues way in advance of the closing, and then the closing in the 1031 is very seamless.
Now, with like anything like the IRS, their rules are very stringent. So can you speak about the timing with regards to the 1031? Because there are certain dates and times that are very important that cannot be missed, correct?
Absolutely. The time periods are absolutely black and white. They include holidays, they include weekends. There's 2 1031 time periods. They both start taking the day the sale closes. So real estate investors who are selling property, they have 45 days from the closing of the sale to identify a potential replacement property, and 180 days from the closing of the sale to purchase one or more pieces of that identified property. Again, that includes holidays, includes weekends. The only time there's extensions for these time periods is when there's a presidentially declared disaster, and we're actually in one of those times right now. So due to COVID-19, the IRS came out with extensions for the time period. If your 45-day identification period or your 180-day exchange period fall within April 1st to July 15th, you now have until July 15th to either identify property or close on your replacement property.
Great. Now, I was just going to say, when you define the identification, how many properties can you identify in that identification period?
And this is especially important for realtors and brokers, because they're, of course, in a position where they're looking and helping the client look for that replacement property. You are limited to the amount of properties you can identify. So if you're identifying 3 or less, called the 3 property rule, and that's the one that clients use the most typically. And the 3 property rule basically says if you identify 3 or less, the property can be any value. If you identify 4 or more, there's some other rules that come into play that kind of limit the identification. If it's 4 or more, the aggregate value of what you've identified can't exceed twice the value of the property that was sold. So if you're identifying 5 properties, and let's say you sold your property for $1 million, the total value of the 5 properties can't exceed $2 million.
And the property you eventually close on, it has to be one of the properties that you identify. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. You can only buy what you've identified within that 45-day period.
So I've had a lot of clients that have been doing this for years, and one of their strategies is to identify their replacement property first before they sell theirs. Do you see that quite often?
Yeah, and we definitely encourage that. Plan ahead. That's my biggest piece of advice. So as a broker, if someone is asking you to list their property, and you've asked some questions and you know that it's an investment property, inquire whether they're doing a 1031 exchange. Because if you know at that point that they're going to do an exchange, you could start looking for the new property right away. You don't have to wait till the sale closes and the clock starts ticking. So the common question I get is, well, I haven't closed on my sale. Can I sign a contract for my new property? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. But you do want to make sure that the sale closes before the purchase closes. Otherwise, you'd be in a position where you're doing a reverse exchange.
Now, we'll get to those in a little bit, but regarding the like-kind definition, there's been changes to the IRS code with regards to like-kind. Can you explain a little bit of the history, what it used to be and what it is now?
Sure. So the biggest change came with the 2017 Tax Reform Act. Prior to 2018, clients were able to do a 1031 exchange on any type of investment real estate, but also any type of asset that's used in their trade or business, or any type of asset that's held for investment purposes. So it didn't have to be real estate. We did a lot of exchanges for artwork, collectibles, aircrafts, barges, vessels, automobiles, franchise rights, copyrights, all sorts of things. We call those our personal property exchanges. With the 2017 Tax Reform Act, that section of the 1031 code was completely eliminated. So now 1031s are only for investment real estate, and the like-kind characteristics are pretty broad for investment real estate. All investment real estate can be exchanged for any other type of investment real estate.
Okay, fantastic. Now, you had mentioned a reverse exchange. So can you explain what a reverse exchange is and the difference in cost on that?
Sure. So a reverse exchange is a situation where you have to close on your purchase before you're able to close on your sale. Either you don't have a buyer for the property that you're selling, or maybe you do have a buyer and the buyer says, I need 60 more days to close because my lender has fallen off. I need more time to come up with financing. But you have found the perfect replacement property, the property you're going to buy to complete the exchange, and the seller of that property says, I need to close within 30 days, right? So you're in a position that you're closing on your purchase before you're closing on your sale. That's a reverse exchange. The time periods are exactly the same in a reverse exchange. The other 1031 guidelines, buying property equal or greater in value, maintaining taxpayer continuity, all those guidelines are actually the same in a reverse exchange. The real difference is the process. The 1031 process for reverse exchanges is much different because we as the 1031 company have to come into the chain of title, and we don't do that in a regular exchange. So that's the biggest difference. And that's just simply because the revenue procedure for reverse exchanges was written in such a way that said that the client can't have title to both the property that they're selling and the property that they're buying to complete the exchange at the same time. So the 1031 company steps into the chain of title to hold that replacement property until their sale property closes.
So your role, and people will see this, you're considered what's called a QI. Can you explain what a QI is?
Yep, qualified intermediary. That's kind of the formal name for our industry. It's also sometimes called the 1031 intermediary, a 1031 company, all the same thing.
Okay. Also, so there is another type of exchange that people might run into, which is a partial exchange. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 1031 rule to get the full benefit of the exchange, to get the full tax deferral, is that you have to, one, purchase property that's equal or greater in value. So we're talking contract sale price less a couple closing costs. And you have to use all of the proceeds from the sale towards the purchase of the new property. If you don't follow one or both of those rules, you may be in a situation that you're doing a partial exchange, which would allow you for some tax deferral and then some tax liability. So for example, if you sell property for $1 million and you find a replacement property and that property is only $850,000, you'd pay taxes on the $150,000 shortfall.
Okay. Now, I've read and I've watched a lot of things on 1031s, and you hear sometimes the term exchange till death as a method of with regards to
the swap till you drop. Yeah.
Could you explain that?
Yeah. So the 1031, you've heard me say the word defer, right? Deferral mechanism. The 1031 is a deferral strategy. So if you were ever to cash out, you have to pay the taxes on the profits from your sale. And those profits would go all the way back to the first property that you started exchanging with years and years ago, because the cost basis of the property that you started exchanging years and years ago follows you into your replacement property. So just to give you an example of that, we'll go back to Marc's example where he bought a $300,000 asset and sold it for $500,000, right? The cost basis in his property is $300,000. And that is adjusted with improvements and depreciation. We're not going to get into that. But let's say then Marc, sells his $500,000 property, buys another property for $600,000. Then he does this for the next 20 years and ends up with $1 million asset. If he sells the $1 million asset and doesn't do a 1031 exchange, he has a $700,000 profit. Why? Because he has to go all the way back to the $300,000 cost basis of the original property that he started exchanging years and years ago, right? However, if Marc passes away and leaves his property to, his favorite 1031 person, Anna, I would inherit the property at the current base or at the current value at $1 million, right? That's what we call a stepped up basis. So I inherit his property at $1 million. I could sell it for $1 million, and there's really no profit, right? There's no profit margin there. And that's really the benefit of the swap till you drop. So the 1031, the takeaway from that is the 1031 is a tax deferral mechanism. The only way to avoid the taxes, as morbid as it sounds, is when you die. But that is also a great estate planning tool for those investors that plan to have their money in real estate, or those investors that are a little bit older, right? If you're in a situation that you've done exchanges for 20 years and you're 80 years old, there's really no reason to cash out now, right? So you want to really use that swap till you drop, benefit, and leave that property to your kids or whoever your beneficiaries are.
Fantastic. Well, Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. And if people wanted to get a hold of you and contact you, how could they do that?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. The best way to get a hold of me is my email. It is Anna, Anna.Barsky, B as in boy, ARSKY at IPX1031.com. Also check out our website. It's www.ip as in Paul, X1031.com. As our website is very interactive, has some great materials on there and some great webinars as well if you want to learn more. But please give me a call or shoot me an email with any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And usually your seminars are about 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So these were just kind of the nuts and bolts. If people want to dig deeper into it, feel free to contact Anna. Like I said, I've been working with her for almost close up to 20 years. So definitely recommend IPX. And Anna, thank you, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.